Okay, so hello folks, how are you? Stuart Wilson here from Zest Life Therapeutic Services. I hope you're all keeping well under these extremely unusual circumstances that we all find ourselves in. I just wanted to send a message out to all of you. Obviously the news that the Leaving Certificate has been changed till the end of July is a significant change for your young people, students, and for even for us as parents as well. So my idea was to put together a little video to assist and to help parents hopefully to just navigate the next few months, which has now turned into being a marathon towards the Leaving Cert, not a sprint after Easter, as would normally be the case. I'm going to share with you, if it's okay, my screen and just a little bit of what to expect for the next kind of 20 minutes or so, if that's okay. And hopefully this will be self-explanatory as we journey through this together. So let me start off, hopefully you're seeing the screen now. Let me start off by just saying thank you to you all. I know that there are quite a lot of parents connected to Wesley College who are involved very directly in the front line, whether that be in frontline services like being doctors, nurses, hospital staff, etc., working with patients at the moment who are going through difficult times. So I want to say a huge thank you from all of us here, I think, nationwide, to be able to appreciate all the incredible work that you're doing to assist frontline services, and also to people in the services industry and retail trade who are helping as well to be able to assist groceries, pharmacy, etc., to be able to look after us all. So thank you so much for that. I think for quite a long time, I was probably thinking that leaving my house every morning and going to work was probably such an easy thing and a wonderful thing, and not taking it probably a little bit for granted. Since this is all kicked off, obviously that's been a little bit different. I think I used to leave the house every morning looking forward to my great day ahead. I would leave the house with my 3 younger children heading towards school and to drop them off on my way to our offices. We have clinics in Churchtown and Harold's Cross, and on my way there I'd be in great form having dropped them off. My wife would kiss me at the front door of the house as I'd leave and say, have a great day. And I'd look forward to my great day. And then we'd go off to work and come back that evening, have dinner together as a family. I have 5 kids at home and look after that and have wonderful time together. And then we'd sit down and reflect on our great day. You know, I probably got a little bit confident and cocky about it all. Now it's significantly different. I don't know about you, but this has completely and totally changed everything. We are now homeschooling my 3 youngest children, and this has changed the entire dynamics of how the house works. I am now having great difficulty getting my children to go to bed, getting them out of bed, getting them to engage in online work that they need to do. And I find myself, actually, I think it was 2 o'clock in the morning, one morning recently, literally just walking through my landing and asking, one of my kids asking me, they were up first, which is a little unusual, but asking me where I might be able to find, they might be able to find some art equipment or pieces that they needed to use for something that they were doing in their bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. And again, I just thought, I'm failing here as a parent. So I don't know if you're feeling that yourselves, but it's quite difficult. Nowadays, when I leave my house in the morning time, I'm so incredibly exhausted from this whole process that I can't even find my wife's face to kiss it before I leave. I find myself leaning over and shaking hands with her mostly and just wishing her the very, very best of luck before I head off into my day. So this homeschooling situation has completely and totally changed everything for all of us. I want to talk a little bit about what to expect for the next kind of 20 minutes or so, if that's okay. I humbly want to suggest some tips and tools that might help us, and truthfully are things that I'm trying to do in my house, because it is a constant struggle and we are learning from doing things right and some things wrong. So I want to be able to share some of the things that I'm doing both professionally with our clinical work, but also at home, just that I find are really helpful and beneficial. So I'm humbly suggesting some of these. If you're doing them already and all is well, fantastic, keep going. We're all cheering you on. But if you're struggling with a few things like me and my wife currently, then we're all in this together. Let me start by saying something a little bit negative that might seem a little unusual for a video like this, but I do fear down the line a little bit of a mental health tsunami after this earthquake has cleared. Some of our kids are going through a really difficult time right now because, let's be fair, this is a difficult set of circumstances. I have put a video together for your young people to try and hopefully inspire them a little bit into motivation to be able to help themselves through this period of time. And one of the first things I've said to them is it's really natural and normal to moan about the circumstances that they find themselves in, because this is unfair. This is not a good set of circumstances. These young people who have been working up to their Leaving Cert for years, not just this year, but for years with this in their mind. The ground has shifted completely from underneath them. And now as a result of this, they are now facing into an extended period of time, right up to August, to sit their Leaving Cert with no summer on the back of that. So it's completely changed, and it's okay for them to be upset and to moan. So much uncertainty is what's producing anxiety in our young people right now, and clinically we're seeing this come through into our clinics. Lots more anxiety, lots more depression, lots of issues that are raising for young people that would be natural and normal, but that they're just multiplied by 10 right now. So I think it's okay to say that we are seeing an unfairness attached to that. Obviously, they're missing friends, they're missing grandparents. They may not be seeing grandparents currently who are cocooning, or they're worried about you guys maybe on frontline staff, etc., who are working through the pandemic. So there's a lot for us all to contend with. And usually some people will go somewhere to be able to lean on people to do that. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, because they don't have that physical touch that a lot of young people require right now. I'm also going to talk a little bit later on about something that I'm very passionate about, which is the whole world of cyber psychology right now, the impacts of screen time and excessive screen time that our young people are now being forced to have to engage with, because obviously they can't meet in school and they can't meet their friends face to face. That in itself, I'm concerned about creating a mental health tsunami on the far side of this. So just to start off with that I want to be clear that I hope some of the things we raise in this video will actually assist us to realize some of the things we can improve and do well, so that we don't see this tsunami hit. So what can we do as parents to help them through their Leaving Cert? Obviously, you have lots of supports in Wesley College that are incredibly helpful. I know there's lots of teachers, year heads that are really helpful and happy to engage and to assist young people. And also you have the care team, chaplain, etc., to be able to assist any young people who might be struggling. And I really want to suggest that it's really important to reach out if you do need that currently. So I'm going to talk about some things that will help parents to get over the line with their Leaving Cert coming into the next few months. The first one sounds a little bit unusual when I say take stock, and that's this. I don't know about you, but for the first week of this pandemic, I actually found the ground moving from underneath my feet so significantly that it led me into my own issues around my routine being knocked out and my issues around how things were going to look. There was an aspect of anxiety attached to that it was unsure how things were going to be. And obviously we've mentioned that certainty or lack of certainty would produce anxiety. So I really had to kind of check in on myself, and found myself having good long conversations and walks with my wife to think and structure the time ahead, how we were going to use this time. I had to learn new skills about doing things like this, but also to realize the importance of self-care. And self-care and self-regulation are different, a little bit different here. They may be a part of the same thing, but to realize that regulation requires daily assistance. It's a daily occurrence that I need to assist my own moods, my own wellness, by regulating my own moods on a day-to-day basis and doing things, not just thinking things, but doing things that would really help ease that pressure. So creating important routines daily for yourself is really important. In other words, are you putting the mask on, in theory, metaphorically, in the airplane? Are you putting the mask on for yourself first before you can even consider helping your family around you? And I wrote in a little message here about being intentional about relationships. And this sounds a little unusual, but I found that part of my daily kind of regulation of mood to assist myself feel good was to connect with people. So that might be going for a walk. What I did was go for a long walk, an hour or two. And on that walk was to connect with some people who maybe I haven't spoken to in a while, maybe some family members as well, or just connecting in an encouraging way with people that I knew if I contact and communicate with them, that it's going to make me feel better. Not that I'm using them, but because I actually do genuinely care. It's a lovely conversation and a lovely phone call. So I found that those intentional conversations, in other words, those intentional relationship builders, had me coming back from my walks feeling much, much happier, much better. The last point I've written there is staying united as parents. The first week of this pandemic, with all my kids at home, all 5 at home, I found that I was being played off mum and mum was being played off me, and we were getting things wrong. Sometimes we were even having disagreements about how we should do things with the kids. So we really kind of sat together and said we need to be united as parents, that regardless of how the next few weeks is going to pan out, we're going to stay united. And one of the most critically important things, and that was to get time together, not just time in the house, because we have loads of that, but time together, time to kind of invest a little bit in our relationship as mum and dad. So this sounds unusual, but starting into this about how we can help our young people, listening to their moans. I said to our young people, it's important to moan. And you might say, well, they're really good at moaning. And forgive me if there's any young people listening. But it's really important for them to moan. Our young people are working out of the reptilian part of their brain. They haven't got a fully developed cortex, as we know, the rational thinking part and the logistical part until they're into their mid-20s. So they're working out of their feelings much more than we are. You and I will regulate our emotions through using our cortex. They are working out of that aspect of their brain, which is closely linked to the central nervous system. So when they feel anxious or upset, you'll see the behaviors of that quicker than you would in a fully developed brain as an adult. So listen to them makes a big difference, and happily helps them to be able to literally to calm their own central nervous system. So if you think about the reptilian part of the brain being like my fist, which then extends into the central nervous system, the limbic system, or the amygdala, which is the top of the brain, or the lid, sits over that. And then the cortex is the entire top part, the rational thinking part. So to self-soothe when the amygdala literally goes into panic or anxiety or upset, to self-soothe, some of the things that are really helpful are what I'm going to mention now. Listening to them, in other words, us talking. I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you ever listen to your young people and all you're doing is thinking what way you're going to reply to them. So it's listening with an intent to reply. That's not listening. Listening and only replying with more tips and tools or assistance to get them to talk more is proper listening. So in other words, I'm hearing what you're saying, tell me more. Because if you find yourself telling them what to do, it's literally gone over their head. They're not listening to you anyway. Ask your young people, they'll tell you this. So listening is really where we're using our ears only, and we're using our mouth very little. If you find yourself offering them wisdom, stop. I don't know about you, but my own people will tell me that they're more intellectually smart than me anyway. So therefore, my wisdom is not important. What is important is my relationship with them, because I assist them by communicating in this way, hopefully for them to self-soothe by listening and have them talk. And I've just mentioned at the end here that they are afraid, aren't we all right now? This is a very strange situation we are in. So creating time for us to listen to our kids is not just important, it's essential. I've mentioned this to your young people about who are they leaning on as someone to go to. A lot of their go-to people are not available to them right now. I don't mean as mom and dad, you're not a go-to, of course you can be, but their normal go-to people are usually people their age. So their connections with their friends, their conversations with their friends, or their teachers in school, or a rugby coach, or a hockey coach, or somebody who's perhaps in music, or a tutor or something like that, is their go-to person quite regularly. They don't have those people right now. So they're struggling to be able to have those connections. It might be conversations that they have in the times in school where they're able to have downtime, like transition times or going to their locker times, etc. So they're not happening, and that's very difficult for your young people right now. So I've asked you, if you can, to promote yourself as a go-to person. Now, you might say, well, they're not going to talk to me about stuff. It doesn't matter. Actually, if you just promote yourself and offer yourself, that really impacts. So what you're saying is something like, listen, I know that it's difficult times for you right now, and you probably are trying to communicate with your friends, but I just want you to know I'm here for you if you need me. I mentioned there, promote other people to go to. So that's something that I have found incredibly useful over the years. So for our young people, might be promoting a youth pastor, a teacher, a sports coach, somebody that that they will listen to if they had the impact. So trying to promote that person to connect with your young person could be very, very helpful, because they will listen to them. I've mentioned here, if you don't have the relationship with them, you don't have the right to challenge them. Now, that's a little bit controversial. Can I ask you to hold that till the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about why. We can't have if we don't have the relationship, we've got to build the relationship. We've got to create that. And actually, this downtime is an incredibly good time to do this, and to invest a little bit in your relationship with your young people. But if you feel you don't have that relationship with them, that maybe mom can easier do that, or dad could easier do that, then say, look, I'm sorry, I know I haven't been around or available too much for you recently, but I just want you to know that I'm here if you need me. The final point is what I say is to discover their love language and to offer and meet it. Now, what do I mean by this? There's a book written by a guy called Gary Chapman, who wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages. Now, this is very useful and helpful in relationships in general, but it's also incredibly beneficial to play with this and understand with our children. I think I was 10 years married at the time when I just had a conversation with my wife about our love languages, about how we felt love from the other person. Simple as that. And I thought I was being a bit of a hero about this, and thought that I was meeting all her love needs and was basically wearing the cape, to which she very quickly explained to me that no, I wasn't. And a conversation came from that. And I discovered that I was meeting my wife's love languages in the way of my love language. So my way was to communicate it, to say it using words, and also to use physical touch for hugs and things like that. My wife's was more about, well, that's all fine, but spend quality time with me. Give me your time. I asked her, how much of my time do you need and when? She said, all of it, all of the time. I'm joking, but it gave me an understanding as to what she needed from me. So as a result of understanding that, we had a conversation, and we set up a couple of things that just made massive change to our relationship. It was so beneficial. A couple of things like every single Thursday we have a date night. Doesn't matter where we are, what we're doing, we take time out. A little bit more difficult in pandemic times out the back garden for a bit of food or something. It's not quite the same, but it's still good. We're going for a walk or doing something like that, but she needs that quality time. We brought in something called couch time at the end of every single day. And when we've had dinner together as a family, mum and dad have 15, 20 minutes on the couch, have a chat, have a catch up, to ask the question, how are you doing? How's your heart? To then being able to just have the kids interact after that, but they don't interrupt it. It's a part of our day. So that has been really helpful and beneficial, and learning my wife's love language has been beneficial. Her understanding mine has been beneficial as well, so that she only meets that way. She's not trying to do it in the ways, if I used to bring my wife home bunches of flowers on a regular basis, it wouldn't work for her. But to give her quality time really does. Why am I saying this? This is essential for our young people. Do you know your children's love language? How do you know your kids are loved by you? I did this with my kids, and out of 5, I got 3 of them wrong, I'm ashamed to say. So I thought it was obvious. It's not always obvious. So my 10-year-old who would run to me and give me a hug, I thought it's definitely physical touch. That might be a part of her language, but actually little small things like receiving gifts or acts of service was huge for her. So writing a note and leaving it on her pillow, or in times of going to school, putting a note in her lunchbox. Little things. And here's the thing. Once you find out their language, ask them for ways you can meet that language for them and agree them with them. So for one of my girls, it's going out for dinner with them and spending time with them. So you've got to ask and then try and meet those needs in that way. Okay. And when we do that, here's the important thing. When you're trying to meet needs, I said to you earlier on, you don't have the right to challenge our kids if we don't have the relationship, because they're not listening to us anyway. So we have to meet the needs, and think about it this way. The needs are underneath. Okay, so when we've met the needs, that's the foundations that have been built. And then when we come in to put in boundaries, rules, regulations, things that are agreements in the house, for instance, even doing your chores, we have the relationship, they will listen more intently then. But if we don't have the needs met underneath, because we're not loving them on purpose, we're not loving them with intent, then rules and regulations, they just fight them. They don't tend to even engage with us on them. Young people will say to you that respect is a mutual thing. It's created between mums and dads and kids. And that's where congruence and integrity are formed, I believe. So love language is an important step for that. This sounds like an unusual thing, but asking them the question, how are you doing? Do you ever find that with your young people? You ask them, how are you? Everything's fine. How is everything today for you online with school? Grand. Are you getting everything done? Yeah. There's not an awful lot of reaction sometimes. So if we're worried about them or we're wondering how they are, actually to ask them a more specific question. Where are you on the line? 0 being, I am shockingly bad, I'm doing terrible today. 10, I'm amazing and everything's wonderful. Where are you on the line gives us a little bit of an indication and playfulness almost attached to, well, I'm not doing great, to be honest with you. I'm at a 2 today. And asking them the question, really, how can I help you as your dad or as your mom? How can I help you get from a 2 to a 3? It might be a big deal to try and get from a 2 to a 10, but how can I get from a 2 to a 3? Sometimes that's enough. It doesn't need to be where we have to be living at 10 all the time. It's impossible anyway. But if we were able to assist them to get from a 2 to a 3, that would hugely impact. And where you're on the line is a really simplistic question to be able to use just to get that answer. I do some wellness workshops with a buddy of mine who's an incredible guy who speaks into this area. And one of the tools that he talks about regularly is this simplistic wellness jar. And I love this concept because it's just so simple, and yet it's so individualistic. You can do this with your young people, create a jar for yourself and for them, where you're writing down some things that get you, if you go back to the wellness line, that get you from a 2 to a 3, or indeed a 5 to a 6, but some things that you're feeling at the moment low and you want to get to somewhere feeling better, that you literally just get some Post-its, get a nice jar, put a little bow around it for fun, and then put it into your young person's bedroom. And on that, you have agreed some things that they can do. It's their jar that they can do immediately that they're feeling low on the line, that they can bring themselves back up the line a little bit. My pal says that one of the things he loves doing is putting on his list and going for chips. He just loves chips. And we had this funny conversation. I think he keeps putting it on the top of his wellness jar. But anyway, to be able to assist him to move up the line a little bit, it might be going for a walk. It might be taking out the dogs and playing with them in the back garden. It might be playing with the cat. It could be listening to music, having a shower. There's a whole everyone's different. Take about 10 things that you know, as soon as I do those, they lift me. You know, it might be, I think of 3 things I'm grateful for. I journal, I put some things, I have a time of prayer, I have connection with music. Whatever the things are for you that bring you up on the wellness line, put them into the jar. But get about 10 things and make it colorful. So if you're feeling low, you go to the jar and you pick something out and you do that. So it's not about just thinking good thoughts, it's about moving into a place of action. And I suggest that everybody has one of these, if at all possible, in their bedroom. Why is this helpful? Because actually what you're doing is you're assisting your children on the line to become resilient. You're trying to help them in times where they're not feeling well, so will assist themselves to get better, to feel better. And not just doing it for them. Kids are great at that. Do something to make me feel better. Well, what can you do to make you feel better? Have you tried something from your wellness jar? This sounds a little unusual, but just role modeling these good boundaries then. So remember, we've met the needs, now we're looking at the boundaries. People would say to me that keeping a peaceful home it can be difficult at times with just everyone at home. I'm the same. There's 7 of us in the house right now. And frankly, at times it can be difficult just to keep peace amongst everybody. Keeping a peaceful home is important, but I find it so much easier when I'm looking after myself first. So getting time for me to self-regulate and self-care before I even consider what I'm going to do with the others is essential. And getting time with myself and my wife together is essential. From there, there's going to always usually be better outcomes, to be honest. So showing unity and fairness, I should say, in our parenting styles is really important. I think it's really important, even in Leaving Cert year, folks, to get us over this line to assist our young people in areas of resilience and keeping going and motivating them, but even a little bit of inspiration. Some simple things, they might say they hate doing them, but simplistic chores around the house, like it might be just filling a dishwasher. Now they might moan and groan about doing that, and they might even say things like, "Oh, in my time of great need and my Leaving Cert, it's the last thing I need to be doing." I couldn't agree with that, because I actually think that resilience and assisting them in their own areas of self-esteem is, even though it's difficult right now, by still doing the right things. And the right things is teaching them that expectations are important, and a couple of chores is not going to kill them, but actually hugely benefits the house. Because I'm sure if you're working or working from home, or maybe you've lost a job in these current circumstances, you're not the one doing everything. The house has to operate with everybody in unity. So simplistic chores, we do that in our house by simply writing up, because I wouldn't remember them all otherwise, writing up, well, my wife did the chart, and I fully endorsed it by saying that we would send it around to all of our kids on WhatsApp. So they have it and they can't even ignore it. That drives them mad. But anyway, it's written up there, and each day they've just got one chore. Now I have enough kids that one chore a day gets us through the week, but simplistic chores and those expectations are on a chart, and it's someone's day to do that. And I have found it's been great. They've actually followed them. Kids hate surprises, so no surprises. Don't spring a surprise on them. Oh, and by the way, will you mow the lawn? It'll just wreck the conversations and wreck their head. The next comment there is meet love languages, which we just talked about, and you're doing. Create the wellness jar. You're doing that together. I find eating together as a family hugely impacts, and it's very beneficial. Creates conversations at a time when it's lovely to have them. I'm going to talk in a moment about one of the most important things your young people will do in good protocol leading up towards the Leaving Cert. And we'll talk about that just in a moment. That's healthy sleep routines and exercise. And I'm writing in here at the end, wake up reminders, not wake up rouse. I don't know about you, but I messed this up in the first stage of this pandemic, where the wake up times and get up times were all over the place for the kids. And I want to talk about red zones and green zones for a moment. A red zone is where your young people, any young people listening here, forgive me, your young people will enter onto the edge of a red zone. A red zone is when you jump into it, is mayhem, upset, rouse, fights, arguments, all explosives kind of stuff. They will enter right up to the edge of a red zone, and if they're not feeling good or if they're not in a good space, they will basically try and pull you into that space with them. They will invite you in, or they'll invite a sibling in. And that's almost how they work out their frustration and upset. What I'm saying to you is that that's not helpful as an adult. They're not working off a fully developed brain. You are. As an adult, when you know I'm at the edge of a red zone here, your only correct action is to walk away and do what I call the stop method, S-T-O-P. Stop what you're doing, take a break and walk away. Always observe. Think of the bigger picture here. You want peace and calm, and you don't want to be all upset yourself. And then P is planning and preparing for the next time, so that you're actually talking about what's the next time mean. You learn and grow from a green zone. You're sitting in a green zone where you're having a conversation going, usually when they've gone away because you've walked away and therefore it's calmed the situation down. And they come back a few minutes later and say, oh gosh, I'm sorry, or half an hour later, or some cases hours later, to say, I'm sorry, I know I was upset, I shouldn't have spoken like that, or blah, blah, blah. There might be consequences to that behavior, but the growth is done in the green zone. And conversations I had there. Do you ever do that in a red zone and say, I'm taking your phone for a month, and you have all these kind of things that you are consequences to behavior, and you never follow through on them, and they never happen. Nothing gets learned. And actually what you're telling your young person is, when you want a red zone, just give me a shout and I'll come into that red zone with you. We'll all learn nothing from it. We'll get nowhere, absolutely nowhere with it. And we'll repeat it again because we're used to doing that. No learning. If we get into a space of a green zone, we can do all of the learning from there. So I hope that makes sense and doesn't sound too confrontational about how we deliver it. I'm going to work a little bit and talk about sleep hygiene, if that's okay. Sleep hygiene is not about having a shower before you go to bed. It's about sleep patterns and understanding sleep patterns. And this at the moment is incredibly important for our young people. They're not necessarily going to agree with this. I'm going to speak to them in the video I'm doing for them about this, because if you try to implement it without getting the boundaries right, if you don't get the needs right, and you try and implement this, they're going to fight you on it. And that is their sleep routine. So we all know that our melatonin, which is the sleep cycle hormone, when melatonin rises at nighttime, we get tired and we fall asleep. Melatonin is essential and rises naturally as our day goes on and as it gets dark. We also have now, for any of you who are neuroscientists or psychologists or psychiatrists, you're going to know that I'm totally simplifying this. So for the benefit of this conversation, work with me. We need to assist them to allow their melatonin to rise, because it's in their REM sleep, their deep sleep, their brain replenishment sleep, that all the good stuff is happening at nighttime, getting rid of the cortisol and replenishing brain cells that have died off during the day. So good sleep is essential, and long sleep is essential for them. So because we have forced them online an awful lot more at the moment, we are basically creating a lot of cortisol in the central nervous system in their brain. Why? Because excess work of screens, science will say excess viewing of screens can increase cortisol in our brain. And cortisol is the stress hormone. So because we're increasing cortisol impacts on our wellness. So cortisol, if it increases, brings our serotonin, which is our mood, often quite down. So we have kids who are highly stressed and whose moods are low. Now, that goes up and down in any given day like this. However, when it's coming towards sleep time and we've been on screens, and your young people in the age group that they're on pre-pandemic are spending about 5 hours a day on screens. Now, during this pandemic, it's up to 10 to 12 hours a day, because we're putting them on screens for viewing their work in school, and then their connections with their pals, and then just Netflix and calming down at nighttime and watching something to chill out. So huge amount of time on screens. Now, it's okay, but we need to know how to pull that down. So as their cortisol levels are rising, and cortisol, the science would say it's the backlight on screen. So watching any kind of a laptop, iPad, phones they're essentially causing difficulty for our brain and making us find difficulty with our melatonin to rise at nighttime. So what can we do with this? So as we know, this is going on every day and our melatonin starts to rise, cortisol will stop the production or slow the production of our melatonin, our sleep. So it means that even though our body might be exhausted and fall asleep at night, our brain is not going into a deep sleep for, science will vary on this, but certainly up to a few hours after we have slept. So your body's asleep, your brain's not doing what it needs to be doing for itself. So as much as we can, we need to try and assist ourselves to get the routine or the sleep hygiene correct to aid better sleep. And I'm not saying that your young people might say, well, I'm having no trouble sleeping, even though I'm watching 10 hours of screens a day. They are, but they don't know they are. And you'll know that because they're waking up tired every morning, even though they're having good levels of sleep. So what do we mean? What do we do? About an hour before bedtime, no screens. And I mean no screens. TV is not so bad because it doesn't have a backlight, but it's not as good as the next things I'm going to mention. I'm a great believer in having no phones in bedrooms if at all possible, and getting into some cycles that work really, really well. What are they? If we go for a walk at nighttime, the last hour and a half before we go to bed, because our cortisol is high from watching screens and our moods may be low, it literally does the opposite effect. It brings down our central nervous system hypersensitivity, and it allows our cortisol to reduce and our serotonin to rise. And with the serotonin, because they rise like friends, the serotonin and the melatonin will rise together, whereas the cortisol will interrupt it. So a walk is wonderful. A face-to-face conversation, not on a phone, a face-to-face conversation will do the same. It'll bring down cortisol levels and increase your serotonin levels, allowing melatonin to rise, which is wonderful. So ideally, walk and talk with somebody. Obviously, staying within the parameters of what the government suggests we can do. Reading is brilliant. So having a book or a magazine beside the bed is absolutely wonderful. Not the same as reading online or reading a Kindle. Some of you will argue that with me because Kindles don't have a backlight, but it's not producing serotonin, which a hard copy of a book will do because it alerts all the senses. So as much as is possible, reading brings down the cortisol, brings up the serotonin, allows the melatonin to rise. So does writing. But you know this, any of you who are artistic or art students, you know that anytime you do art or even doodling or journaling brings down your stress levels and increases your moods. We know this, we've been doing it for years. Those four things are the things that while your young people are online a lot, and we don't want to stop them right now. Let's deal with this post-pandemic when the Leaving Cert's over. But the reality is they need to connect with their friends. They need to Zoom and have conversations with their grandmom or granddad. These things are important and they're good for connectivity right now. So we need to overlook it. But when it comes to sleep, we need to know that we need to be able to assist the melatonin to rise by just doing these 4 things. 4 things that will really impact them and help them to mentally feel better about themselves, to mentally sustain their cortisol levels, and to be able to increase their serotonin and allow their melatonin to rise for nighttime. So guys, I probably flooded you with an awful lot of information right there, and I'm sorry if it's felt like it's been coming at you really fast, but I wanted to be able to try and assist everyone humbly during this time, because it's not an easy time for families. And if there's any questions that you might have or anything we can help you with, please feel free to contact me. My contact address is simply stuart@zestlife.ie, or you can contact me on that mobile number or text me to that. And if you have any questions that are not answered here, I'd be delighted to be able to assist you in any way that you feel is appropriate. It's an unreal situation that we find ourselves in currently with our young people, but I do believe that in the greater scheme of things, we can get through this, and we don't have to do it alone. So please feel free to contact us if we can help. Take care and God bless you, and look forward to seeing you on the other side of this. Take care. Bye-bye.